Let's take a look at your market news now. Asian markets were mostly lower, with technology firms extending last week's sharp losses. Stocks were dragged down by a drop in Apple shares, which filtered through to Apple's Asian suppliers and tech firms. A series of reports on Apple expressing doubts about iPhone sales has battered tech stocks across the world. The Nikkei fell 0.33%, the Hang Seng index down by 0.5%, and the Shanghai composite index losing 0.1%. Wall Street's three major indexes declined on Friday as investors worried about a jump in US bond yields and technology. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 202.09 points. The S&P 500 lost 22.98 points. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq dropped to 91.93 points. Let's take a look at your main financial indicators now. Brad Khumalo from Investec joins me in studio now. Thanks so much for your time, Brad. Let's start with the US and Asian markets being dragged down in part by these tech stocks.
Yes, like you were saying, basically Apple came out and basically trying to manage expectations, saying that they don't see those Apple sales being as vibrant as previously they have thought. And obviously everyone that's Apple related, whether it's in Taiwan or in China, they're also, getting the collateral damage, so to say there. Yeah.
And this volatility that we've been seeing in the US markets, has it eased in any way?
In terms of looking at the markets generally in the past 2 weeks, they haven't been as bad as previously. As soon as the tweets, stopped about the trade wars, we sort of saw the markets stabilizing, so there was less volatility. But we saw volatility in the oil price when basically Trump came up with that tweet saying he thinks the OPEC is keeping the oil price basically artificially high because he knows there's oversupply in the markets. I mean, there's barrels everywhere, including ships in the middle of nowhere, just sitting there with oil. And he thinks this is not good, and it's not good for the consumer. One of the few tweets I agree with. And as a result, we saw a sharp decline in the oil price. But as it's settled again, it's not as fun as the stock market.
Okay. Something that's also declined is the value of the rand a little, but how much does that have to do with what's happening with the dollar? And can you break that down for us?
So yeah, the rand dollar story, it's not just the rand dollar story, it's mostly, other risk currencies, so all the emerging market currencies, so it would be the Russian ruble and those kinds of currencies, Brazilian real. What's going on there is that investors are taking some money out, or that's what it's construed as, from equities and going into American US bonds, which I find very interesting because what's exciting these investors is a yield of something close to 3%. It's not even that high, but because they know it's stable, I think in terms of risk, they're thinking, okay, this is better than investing elsewhere, especially in emerging markets. And then, as a result, those inflows into the US lead to their currency strengthening and all these other major currencies weakening.
Okay. Let's take a look at some company news now. Steinhoff, their share price has fallen about 90% since Marcus Jooste resigned and the news of those financial irregularities came out. They've also come out to say that they're going to try and make this better and restructure for their creditors. Is this going to help with the share price, which is sitting at around R3.30?
I'm not sure if it's going to help with the share price, but we've seen on Friday during that AGM, basically management came up with some clarity. Like you said already, the debt that they're sitting on is about 154 billion rands, so that's about 10.44 billion euros, and mostly is euro denominated. But the problem is that, when they had that debt, the last time they financed that debt, they added to the debt, they got about a nice, 1.5% interest rate. But now they can't get that, and their risk has changed significantly since Marcus Euster has left to now. So they're probably going to service that debt at way higher levels. When it comes to restructure time, like you're talking about, we're talking about something probably north of 7% in euros. That's quite steep, and it's good for the bankers, but I don't know for how long, because Steinhoff doesn't have the cash reserves to actually pay off all of this debts. But what's coming now in the interim is that they, of that 154 billion rands, they have to pay 770 million euros to all their bankers. And they did say the negotiation phase is quite interesting. There's about 150 different banks that are involved. Sure. It's going to be tough negotiating those terms. What's interesting also that came out in that same AGM is the fact that well, what I didn't understand really is the fact that they're re-electing Deloitte, which, you know, they've been part of this all along. They probably should be getting new auditors, but they're re-electing those, which is a, you know, eyebrow raising. And PwC is making some progress into their investigation to see, you know, the extent of, you know, this fraud. And what they came up with is that they did find irregularities, in terms of the income statement. So overstating of the income, they see a pattern of some sort there, and overstating of assets in different transactions. So that's it's kind of news you want to hear, but you want to hear the extent, like I always said, the quantum and what it means in going forward.
Steinhoff was one of those golden children of stocks. Naspers is also, it's said to be the world's greatest share. There was a recent article by Sean Pesh who said people must be cautious about Naspers because of Tencent, in part where it's based. And then also I'm thinking because of Naspers selling off some of their Tencent holdings, should people start being worried about the stock, or is it still the go-to stock?
No, I think the selling down of the stock was just to indicate to the market that actually this thing has value and actually is tradable come a time where they actually need the cash. So we know we've ticked that box, we're moving on. Talking about Tencent, because I'm not going to focus more on Naspers, I want to focus more on Tencent, because that report is saying that Tencent, where's the value in Tencent? So Tencent is a great business. I don't think we have enough time to talk about everything in Tencent. So just want to stick to WeChat. So if you compare WeChat to its competition, which I think it's Facebook. Facebook has about 2.2 billion monthly active users. Tencent has 1 billion. WeChat has 1 billion active users. But the thing is, they're only making about $4 billion versus Facebook, which makes about 40 billion. And the interesting thing about WeChat is that the users are more engaged. They spend about 90 minutes a day. Whereas Facebook users actually spend about 40 minutes. And I think that they're going to monetize that going forward.
Okay, Bright Khumalo from Investec, thanks so much for your time on SABC News. It's time for a short break. I'll have more business news when we come back. Please stay with us.